So what was the diversity rules by which he was hired in this position? Like, did they go through a process of vetting various
What they
candidates
said
for this
was,
role
what they said
before
was,
they
we
hired
don't
this
have
guy?
any princes.
You're really the only prince.
We needed a prince.
They have a prince quota. It's a federal government EEOC regulation on number of princes per capita.
We're really scraping the minority barrel there, aren't we?
You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. I'm here with Doug from the Rat Cap blog. Now this is a thing. Did I not say that right?
Theratcap.com, baby.
Theratcap.com. He's merchant.
Where it's at.
He's merchant
right.
Like Meghan Markle. So
Right.
I had to say that. Okay.
I have my own dress
No,
line.
we love Doug and we love the Rat Cap podcast. Okay. What are we going to talk about today though, Doug? I don't know. I've got a list of things. It's going to be kind of a grab bag.
Oh, okay.
And the first thing I wanted to complain about something, but it's a seriously first world problem. Am I allowed to do that?
You specialize in these.
Well, that's all I have.
I was going to say, like, as opposed to your usual, like, metaphysical existential crises that you're dealing with.
Well, I figure
The nanny.
Well,
Where's
yes,
the nanny?
exactly. I figure I can always play the illness card because I would like rather be in a tent with like, how do I put food in front of my kid problems than have illness problems, to be honest. It's true. It is very hard. So I will play the illness card in order to complain about summer camps. Am I right? I know you deal with this too.
Yeah. What's going on with yours?
It's freaking March and I have to plan my daughter's entire summer and schedule it, or she will miss out on they'll get full and she'll miss out on all of them. Like being a parent in this kind of privileged world where you're trying to get your kid. I don't know. I don't think my mom did anything except last minute with me. Like I know I went to some summer camps and I'm sure she just was like, yeah, I'll sign her up for next week.
Yeah, right.
There was no internet. There was no, and here we are. It's just like everything else, this like level of perfection and the number of activities all kids are in. And so it's just like, it's so, I mean, this is such a thing to complain about, but this is a massive research project. And then I'm sitting here scheduling and I'm going, I don't know what I want to do this summer. I'm not that organized. I don't know what week I want to go camping or, something like that. And I have to like figure that all out January, February timeframe.
Do you have friends though that are like, I have friends who are super organized and they're like, what are you doing in September?
Oh yeah.
What are you doing next November 31st or November 27th? Like what?
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm doing this weekend.
I have close friends who sent out an email to their friend group, I don't know, December, saying, here's our travel schedule for next year. And they travel a lot. Here's our travel schedule for next year if anybody wants to join us,
Stop.
And it's like the most amazing year. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. But I don't know if that'll work out. Like it'd be like something a month before I'd go, I think I could do that. And then I'd go with them.
Yeah, I psychologically don't like planning things because then I think about them and kind of worry about it and stress about it. I rather just do it at the last minute so then I don't have to do anything if I don't want to. I feel like
your wife, is she a planner? She's more of a planner.
No, she's worse than me.
Even worse. Okay.
Yeah, she never wants to plan anything, so we're always late for things.
You're terrible.
And,
yeah.
But with the summer camps, like I'll be like, well, just sign them up in summer. No, if you don't do it now,
got to do it now.
You're shut out.
Heck?
I know. The internet has made it harder because now there's everyone can access it really simply, and there's all these things to do. Whereas when we were kids, there was like nothing to do. How would you get to it? How would you know about it? It's like
there was like a bulletin, like a literal physical bulletin board at the park center with a list of camps or something at that center, and it was in your neighborhood. It's not like you were driving ping ponging around everywhere.
Exactly.
You know, horse camp over here, soccer camp over there, whatever.
There was literally no way to know about anything. I know. Unless someone sent you in the mail, and no one does that. So
right. I mean, the school might have some stuff. I think most of my day camps were with the school that I went to. And then I would go to sleepaway camp for like 2 weeks every summer. And that was it. The rest of the summer, I just had to figure it out. It was like, well, what are you going to do all day, Sonny? Because nobody's planned anything for you.
Play outside with your friends.
Play outside every day and come up with some wackadoo thing to do. Like once my friends and I decided that we would be in the Guinness Book of World Records for length of braided yarn.
Did you win?
It's not like there was a category for that.
How did that work out?
So we just spent like 3 weeks braiding yarn.
Wow.
And someone would run down the block to see how long it was and how far we'd gotten.
Did they make a movie about that?
Sounds fascinating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, of course we failed.
Sounds awful.
We were like, oh, okay, we're done with this.
Yeah, I tried to make a house of cards, but instead of building it high, I built it low because it was easier.
Kind of modernist.
It was all over the ground, but it was like a house of cards. Yeah. And I thought there was a record involved.
Kind of a mid-century modern house of cards.
Exactly. It was not like a Victorian house of cards or something.
Wasn't a skyscraper.
No, it was a ranch.
Speaking of living in a tent and having to like find food for your kid and being on that level, I've been watching this show Alone. I can't remember if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but you can stream this on Hulu. You can stream season 6 on Netflix, which is how I started with season 6. And then I went to Hulu to watch the first, I think I'm on season 4 now.
Tell me about this again. It's like they're stranded in the wilderness or something.
They drop a person off, they have 10 people, 10 contestants, and they usually either are a serious survivalist hobbyist, or their job is to like teach survival skills or something like that. They're like hardcore professional survivalists. They don't allow amateurs to do this because it's actually really dangerous. Mm-hmm. And they drop them in the middle of the wilderness, and they're kind of like 10 miles apart, 10 to 20 miles apart. And then they just, the contestants have to film it themselves. They have their own camera equipment that they agree to work and everything. And they have GoPros and stuff. They have several cameras. And they have this radio phone that they're supposed to have with them at all times. And they quit. Whenever they quit, they quit. And the last person remaining gets $500,000.
What can they bring?
They can bring 10 things. That's it.
How do you define a thing, though? Like a pocket is a pocket knife one thing?
They must
with a lot of, or like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, like a Swiss Army knife would be one thing.
Okay.
And I'm sure they bring a, sleeping bag as one of their things. A lot of people have an axe, a knife, a big knife, some matches? fishing hooks. No, people don't bring matches. They bring like flint. Or they try to set a fire without flint and bring a bow and arrow, or you don't, and you can't bring a gun. You can only, I think the only weapon you can bring is a bow and arrow. So they set traps and they try to fish and they do all kinds of things, but they're really having to work with the materials in their environment. And I realize that that's a really challenging problem. Just that alone is. But it's incredible how hard it is to not starve to death in the wild. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm kind of amazed at, because I always thought like worst case scenario, we can go hunt deer and fish and do, get meat that way. But
That's
it actually
easy.
is extremely difficult to get enough food that way. And this is why you needed tribes, really, I think.
Yeah.
But now in this season 4, they've gotten teams. So there's 2 people in each team.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk. Like, these people are going to be eating like crazy, and they're starving. So even 2 people can't do it. And in season 6, a guy kills a moose.
What?
And even he was starving to death with the moose.
What do you mean, the moose? How long did it last?
He was eating it every day and was starving because it didn't have enough fat.
Really?
Yes.
So what kind of things do you eat then? Do they find I mean, this is the first thing you have to do, right? Is to find food. Otherwise, if you wait too long, you're going to die.
I know. The first thing they all do, all of them, the first thing they do is shelter.
Yeah. Stay dry.
And water, shelter and water, and then food. So they're usually starving for the first 3-4 days, and really interesting. It's a great show.
Leaves? Can you? Do you know if you can eat leaves? They eat
so many plants, and a lot of them are experts in what you can eat, what you can forage. And a lot of them, a lot of times they're just surviving on what plants and mushrooms, and it's just not enough food, and they're just losing weight rapidly.
Oh.
And I
should get on this program. This sounds like a good program.
It is such a good show. So last season, they were in Patagonia, and there was this guy, one of the 10 contestants. And when he first comes on the scene, I was like, man, that dude's crazy. Like, he's a little crazy. And by the end of his time out there, which was like 2 months, he had been hoarding food, not eating it, and starving to death. And the medics show up because they do periodic medical checks to make sure that you're not in danger of a heart attack. And so they have like rules, like you have to keep your BMI above a certain level and stuff like that. And if you don't, they yank you. So they go to check this guy and his BMI, and he is just, I mean, he is so grossly skinny, and his BMI is too low, and they're going to yank him. And he's like, but I have food. Like, he wasn't eating it. He was storing it. And then he was talking about how if he caught 10 more fish, he'd have enough for Christmas, like to bring. And he wondered if customs would let him bring it home for Christmas. Like, he had just lost his mind.
Wow.
He'd completely gone nuts in the wild.
So he wasn't eating, like, part of the fact that he was hoarding and not eating was the delusion induced by starving.
And then there was this, they periodically put these little captions on the screen to kind of give you information. And as he's talking about bringing it home for Christmas or whatever, and how he's showing his big bucket of smoked fish that he's not eating. And the caption goes, starvation can lead to food hoarding.
Oh.
It's like a kind of a weird delusion or craziness that starvation causes in some people.
I have a friend that starved himself just to see what would happen. He's a doctor, and he was measuring and he figured it would just go for a couple days. He said he went for 9 days, and he said he completely lost. He didn't want to eat. He wasn't hungry after a while, but he could tell I think he was like you're saying, he was losing his mind a bit. And then he saw some food in his house, and he's like, no, I'm not going to eat that. But then he just ate it. And then it triggered the whole thing again. But I think this is what happens after it's like 6, 7, 8, 9 days. You no longer really need food. And it's actually dangerous to eat if you haven't eaten for a week or two.
That's true. You have to
poison
slowly,
yourself.
Right. You have to kind of go slow to reintroduce.
You can die
carefully.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, that's a good show. But what's fascinating is how hard it is to survive. And we do not appreciate the grocery stores in our lives and how amazing it is that it is so not only is it easy to survive, most of us are fat. I mean, most people.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Speak for yourself.
I just like consider that for a second. How privileged and wealthy of a society do you have to be in where more than half of the people, I would say, wouldn't you say maybe at least 70% of people, 75% have an extra 10, 15 pounds that they'd like to lose, but can't seem to lose, like, or more.
No, I think a bigger indicator of this is the fact that people pay money to do extra work at health clubs. Like, hey,
right.
I pay you
hey, how can I go burn some calories?
Can I just move shit around at your place? Like, you have some extra weights? I'm just going to lift them over my head for an hour.
Yeah. only people labor. who are eating too well have to pay to burn calories. And you watch this Alone show, and people obviously eat before they get there. They try to pack on some fat because it helps you go longer. And they're kind of moving normally. And then as time goes on, they're moving really slowly. And they're making decisions like, do I cut wood or go look for food? Because if I cut wood, it'll burn all my calories. You know, like you're literally saying, I only have the energy to do
one thing,
one thing. If I do both, I'll be out of the game earlier because it'll burn too many calories.
Wow.
Like every
How long do they
calorie
usually last?
burn counts.
Do they what's the
couple
average?
of months? Couple of months is
they can
usually
last
the
long,
show.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
What's the weather situation where they bring them? Is it different or is it always pretty moderate? Is it rainy?
Patagonia was fairly moderate. Cold, but in like more of like an autumn kind of way. They're in
South America, right? Like Argentina.
The first 2 episodes, South America. The first 2 episodes are in Vancouver Island, where it is rainy and blustery and cold.
Yeah.
The entire time. And season 4 is back there. So season 3 was in Patagonia. And then season 6, the other season I watched, that's in like the mountains of like Eastern Europe or something. Like I can't even remember where it was, but it's in a really remote mountainous place. So it's cold and it snows. At one point it just completely.
So how long would you last?
A week.
You could last a week?
Yeah.
I think I'd be there for a day.
No, I could. You don't realize like you can live off your body fat. So I could easily last a week. I would just get bored.
I'd be like, fuck this, I'm out.
That is why a lot of people go early, is psychological stuff, because you can actually live off your body for a while. A lot of times they're lonely. They miss their family and friends. They're too extroverted. They don't want to be there anymore. It's too lonely. Fear of predators, because all these places have wild cats and bears and wolves and things like that you have to watch out for, and they have all these encounters. So it's like a legit thing. They're there. But some people are really afraid of them and other people aren't afraid of them.
So one huge takeaway has got to be how social human beings are throughout evolution, and how it takes an advanced society to be an individual.
This one dude in the current season is like, he gets there and he's like, my wife and daughter, they were really upset that I left, but this is a chance of a lifetime. And I was just really surprised at how dependent they are on me and how kind of upset they were that I wanted to do it. I literally had to do this, even though they really were mad at me for doing it. And he's like, oh, Mom, big man, I can handle this. Yeah. 5 days later, he's like, I miss my family. I want to go. And he like totally tapped out. He's like, I'm going home.
Yeah, I'm like that too with the family. Like, okay, you're all going away.
Yeah.
See you later.
And he goes, I'm going home.
For a day or two.
Like,
what you guys doing?
Exactly.
Well, tell me about it.
Oh, you got to go? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Tell me that story again. Yeah, no, we're very social.
Yeah, we are. The guy was like, I'm going home to my family. I'm going to treat them better than I've ever treated them. And like, with all this like gratitude and appreciation, it'll last a month and then he'll be back to his old nasty habits.
Exactly.
So yeah, interesting show. All right. What's the next, do you want to do a, royal report? Because what's great about the current Harry Meghan stuff is that every week there's an Easter egg.
Now it's time for the House of Sunny's Royal Watch.
I haven't really followed it this week, so you can fill us in.
Well, so Prince Harry Windsor, Prince of the Royal Family of England, has taken a schmuck job in Silicon Valley. He's taken a schmuck job. And he has two jobs. One is really gross and political. Maybe I'll cover that one first. He has joined the Aspen Institute, which is a hardcore leftist organization.
Wow.
And he has been made a member of their Commission on Information Disorder. Is that the most Orwellian expression you've ever heard? And so and just listen to his
smelling
statement.
Sulfur.
Listen to his statement about this, which is equally to me, this is the problem with our country. And this is the kind of shit that you see in big corporate America. I'm
going to make a prediction
statements like this. What
you're not going to really understand exactly what he's talking about or what it means, because leftists never level with you, or they never put their cards on the table. It's always like jargon laden, and then you have to sort of like read between the lines of what it really means, or how you're going to be violated. Like which of your rights is going to be violated by this?
That's right. It's a confusing and friendly way of saying how much they're going to F you up the butt. All right. Here's his quote. As I've said, the experience of today's digital world, like he's some sort of freaking sage. As I've said,
like he's been saying this for years.
Like he's been saying this. And he's right. He's the sage of information disorder. As I've said, the experience of today's digital world has us inundated with an avalanche of misinformation affecting our ability as individuals as well as societies to think clearly and truly understand the world we live in.
Misinformation. Okay.
It's my belief that this is a humanitarian issue, and as such, it demands a multi-stakeholder response from advocacy voices, members of the media, academic researchers, and both government and civil society leaders. I'm eager to join this new Aspen Commission and look forward to working on a solution-oriented approach to the information disorder crisis.
Wow.
Right?
So that translation... right-wing people have too much freedom on the internet.
Yeah.
We need to shut them down.
Prince Harry's going to lend his royal voice to, and he's not like someone who's actually capable of anything except being a figurehead. So he's just going to lend his title and literally birth
his
title.
Imprimatur. The royal imprimatur.
Speaking of which, forget Harry and Meghan. If this is the royal report, the other royal report is that the hereditary monarchy of the British nation, the hereditary monarchy of 1,000 years. And I realize that this particular group of monarchs, they aren't 1,000 years old, but right. Okay. Hereditary monarchy just hired a diversity czar.
Come on.
Does that
that
strike you as like the death knell of the royal family? Because, okay, I don't think there's enough royals with black skin. So I think you've got a problem here, royal family. That's what the diversity czar is going to say next. The queen did this, and we
need to be more gay.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to come out.
More transgenders.
Someone's got to transition. I think Kate's got to transition and become king. That's the only way this changes. My prediction of this is the end, literally the end of the royal family. If Charles wasn't going to do it anyway, the queen just did it. because you can't hire a diversity czar in a hereditary monarchy and not like that is a statement against oneself. That's like, this is my family. That's like saying I need a diversity czar to come into my home and tell me, find racism and find ways to be more diverse within my little freaking hereditary club here. It's incredible. It's over. That is the end, because once you get one of those snakes in your organization, they'll find racism. They'll start making all kinds of, and you will be absolutely powerless, and they're insiders and you can't get rid of them. So
hold on a second. Let's talk about the metaphysical problem here, which is it's a hereditary monarchy. So they give birth to other to their heirs, right? How does one diversify your semen? Can we just talk about that for a second? Discuss.
You know what? Science can figure that out.
We'll worry about that later. This is like this is sort of like the, men wanting to be women, or, or claiming that because a man has transitioned to a woman, he can now have a period, or we have to give medical coverage to men who are women who don't have a uterus and stuff like that. Yeah. It's literally like a demand of reality, that reality conform to my like platonic, utopian, insane vision of what the world and reality should be, rather than accepting reality. So this is actually a good development, because I think they may run headlong right into reality if they're not careful.
Who? The royal family or the diversities are?
The diversity people within the royal family. I think they're going to
think it's going to take them down, because the second you have in the news, they're not going to be able to comply with the demands that the diversity czar makes. And there'll be an outcry of the royal family is racist, the palace is racist, and that'll be the end of the monarchy. They'll just get taken down, canceled, right?
I like
that. That to me is, and that
no more royal report. What are we going to do?
No more royal report. I mean, we might follow them in exile. What's from the re-education King William camp doing in Prague today? In his latest podcast, King William, current exile from the British nation.
Well, we do need to exile this Prince Andrew guy. This guy is
what a creep.
Epstein. Yeah.
If that didn't, there's a lot of corruption going on in this family. I realize that. And I don't think Charles is like, I think they have naked pictures of him, because he has said some pretty astonishing things, and he's come out and been political when that's really not allowed. So I think that they force him to say stuff. I don't think, what is his name? Prince, the guy who got caught with Epstein. I don't think he's the only one
Andrew
with dysfunctions.
I love that this Meghan Markle has single-handedly taken down a 1,000-year reign.
She just did it. She just
all the armies and battles and Napoleon. Yeah. Like Hitler couldn't take them down, the British.
But a nasty scheming woman. Hey, we've seen this in history before, where a nasty scheming woman takes down a regime, right?
Yes, it's like Shakespearean.
Not the first time. It's totally Shakespearean.
The irony.
Yeah. So she has managed to take them down, because this is a response to her accusation of racism. This hiring of the diversity czar is a PR response. And for some reason, the queen and her people don't realize how dangerous this is, or they feel like they have no choice. I'm not really sure which. Okay. The other hairy news is that he took a real job, like a full-time job, he so to speak, because he's not really good for anything, with a Silicon Valley firm. And this firm, I'm not even clear what it is exactly, but it's called Better Up Inc., a San Francisco-based health tech company which offers professional and mental health coaching. So I'm really excited to be joining the Better Up team and community. Thanks for having me. I firmly believe that focusing on and prioritizing our mental fitness unlocks potential and opportunity that we never knew we had inside of us. His title is like Chief Impact Officer. Have you ever heard of anything more useless than Chief Impact Officer? That's the most useless title I've ever seen. Like, what's your freaking job?
Besides Prince. Prince is the second most useless title.
Besides Prince. That's right.
But
hey, he could have been useful as a prince. I'm sorry, but he could have been useful. Fair. That is way more useful than Chief Impact Officer of a Silicon Valley startup. Like, he just got paid. Like, literally, you're a whore. You're literally, like, people complain about, oh, Donald Trump, he didn't do anything. He just put his name on things. Like, he just leased out his name as a celebrity. That's exactly what Harry's doing. He's just leasing his name.
So what was the diversity rules by which he was hired in this position? Like, did they go through a process of vetting various candidates for this role before they hired this guy?
We don't have any princes.
You're really the only prince.
We needed a prince.
They have a prince quota. It's a federal government EEOC regulation on number of princes per capita.
We're really scraping the minority barrel there, aren't we?
California should pass a law. You have to have a prince, one prince on every board.
One prince.
You know,
that would actually make the oligarchy really happy if they could get away with that, because then they could have a prince. They could like pay each other. Could pay some African prince to be on their board.
Yeah, or a duke. How many dukes do they have?
Or Saudi Arabia has like how many
got
princes?
Hundreds of them. Yeah,
1,000.
Yeah, that would be like a bonanza for those guys. Yeah. I wonder what his resume is like. What's his what's Prince? What's his face's resume look like? Like, what's his experience and credentials for these jobs? I'd love to see the resume.
Prince. It's like a one pager and it says Prince.
Prince
of the realm. Prince of the realm.
What else do you want? I'm the prince.
I'm the prince. What are you talking about?
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Prince.
Where do you see yourself in 500 years? More princes. So dumb.
Oh my God, that's funny. Where do you see yourself in 500 years? Oh,
Jesus.
So funny. Okay. So
this
too much fun, huh?
What kind of a fucking world are we in? Like, what happened?
You know what? It's the same as it ever was. That's what I'm realizing. Like, I thought.
Really?
Yeah, I think we lived in a golden age.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And now we're just dealing with the usual power broker bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Harry's new job. Another person who got a new job is this transgender medical person who got approved by the Senate, because everybody's a pussy, or maybe that's the wrong word to use when I'm talking about a trans person, because this man
material,
I don't know what is going on there. Okay,
it's not a pussy,
what is
it's
this?
Material.
Some material.
Organic material.
Did you hear they're talking
Multiple
about
purposes.
transplanting uteruses into men who want to be women?
Why not?
I mean, can we just
Why not
put the brakes on some of this stuff? Slow your roll, trans people. All right. Levin is this person's name. Let's see.
Yeah, the man that looks like a woman, or
Here, I'm gonna share my screen so you can see this lady.
Can't describe it.
This lady. Hang on. Can't describe her. This is a Breitbart article I'm about to bring up here. So there's some ads on here, but here she is.
She's
Rachel
stunning.
Levine, probably one of the most unhealthy people on the planet. She's overweight. She pulled her mother out of a nursing home in a state while supporting COVID people being put in the nursing home. She pulled her mom out, his mom. He's a guy. Look at him. And this is your new assistant health Department of Health and Human Services, assistant secretary.
Oh, I think
it's a very controversial
fitting.
appointment. I just feel like if you're going to be in the health area, you should be healthy. And I think that she's not healthy.
I couldn't disagree more. I think this is the perfect representative of government healthcare. It's just like a walking contradiction.
Okay, but we can hope for,
why do we want competent people in these roles? I mean, this is hilarious.
The really big problem with this person is that he approves of transgender hormones being given to children.
Yeah.
Little children. That's something he approves of, and he's now assistant secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. So history will not regard that whole thing, this whole transgender with kids and the trans story hour and the hormones and stuff like that. History is going to look back on that with the same horror that they look back on Nazi experimentation and like all the weird medical horrors of history. It's crazy. Okay. So that's fun. What was I going to say about that? Nothing. That's just the news.
Writes itself.
Oh, so some other news is this shooting in Colorado in the grocery store. Here, I'm going to stop sharing this screen so we can. So a guy shoots up a grocery store, kills 10 people. They say a lot of journalists say he's white. Turns out he's a Muslim, a devout Muslim who's a Trump hater. So we've stopped hearing about this guy. And I love how the mainstream media has converted his name. His name is Ahmed Al-Issa, and they are calling him Ahmed Alissa to make it more Western, but it's actually Al-Issa. And this is no big surprise. It is of note that it's the first terrorist attack that we've had in a while, because when Trump was in office, we didn't have these. And I don't really fully understand that, because I don't think Trump was particularly great. I mean, he took down ISIS and all that stuff, but it didn't seem like he had control over a whole lot in his administration. I don't see him as having control over the FBI, or in fact, he was being attacked by the FBI. So,
well, unless you think the FBI is actually staging these events.
Well, this is what I'm wondering. Like, why is this only occurring in Democrat administrations?
Yeah, suddenly we got all the oldies are back. You know, the mass shootings. We've got Korea, North. You know, we've got like wars brewing in the Middle East. Like suddenly we've got all the good stuff happening.
I shouldn't have said Democrat, because it's establishment, because it happened under Bush too. So yeah, it's
deep state
the oligarchy. The oligarchy likes terrorist attacks, and when Trump was in, they didn't do it, and I don't really understand that. Maybe because if they did it, Trump wouldn't stand for it as much. You know, if they got public sentiment riled up enough, Trump could have done something about it. I don't really know. I don't get it. But the most interesting, weird thing about that shooting is the video that came out of the guy who goes up to the grocery store after. And if you haven't seen this, I'll try to post a link to it in the description, because if I can still find it, I don't know if it's still out there, but it is weird. This guy comes on the scene of the grocery store. There's a dead body in the parking lot. There's a dead body on the ramp coming up to the grocery store. There's a dead body inside the doors, the sliding glass doors. He's acting like, what's going on? What's going on? I heard there's a shooting or something, or there's a shooter. Is there a shooter? There's two guys standing right outside the glass doors, just standing like this. Some old guys like this, standing up with his back to the glass doors where there's apparently an active shooter. There's a dead body 10 feet from the guy, and he's not doing anything. And there's another guy, and he's not doing anything. And the guy who comes on the camera doesn't even bother to bend down and see if the fucking person laying there is alive and might need help. Like, or the guy 10 feet inside the door might be alive and need help. Like, my brain was exploding. The actions of these three people in front of the store are not normal. And I don't get it. I mean, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or like, I don't understand this. This either means people have become so sociopathic to not want to bend down and check a person who's been shot and is laying on the ground to check and see if they're okay, and there might be something you could do to not have that immediate instinct.
Or to run.
I don't get
run
it.
Away?
Or to run. Yeah. Don't stand with your back to the glass at minimum, right?
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Either everybody there's a psychopath or something,
or they're crisis
or
actors.
It's like a freaking play.
Stage, yeah.
Because it's not human. It's just inhuman watching this thing. It will immediately impact you. You'll feel it everywhere in your body. This is wrong. This is wrong. I don't know, man.
You know, we saw this, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I did see this similar thing during the Boston bombing. I analyzed a lot of that footage. It was very, very similar. It appears there are crisis actors there. There's something very weird about it. This is
like Alex Jones territory where we're like,
no, this is me territory, because I looked at it and I have the same reaction. Like, I'm not saying I know what happened. I'm just saying this is what I see in front of my eyes on the video screen. This is going on. Someone explain this to me, please. Yeah. So just go look at it. What did you think of them? So they all painted this guy as a white supremacist before the news came out. And then as soon as it became clear he was a Muslim, they changed the narrative to that he was bullied by white supremacists. Did you see this?
Are you kidding? No,
they changed the whole narrative that there's a CNN tweet that he was, they've got all the tweets of all the leftists that said, oh, he's got to be a white guy, and he's a white guy. He's a white guy. Got to be a white guy. And
I remember that.
As soon as it came out, they changed it to he was bullied, suffers from mental illness, bullied in school for being a Muslim, and made fun of.
So if somebody goes into a grocery store and kills 10 people, I don't really care if he has a mental illness. I don't really care. Right? Hang him. I don't understand. Why do we even care if he's mentally ill? He's a danger to society.
You're by definition, you're mentally ill.
Yeah, you can't do that unless you're a freaking psycho.
But
so you have a mental illness. So who cares? The guy just showed up in court in a wheelchair. Like is he going to play the illness card and like get sympathy? He's killed 10 people. Supposedly.
Well, he was
allegedly.
A demon. But you know what? Maybe Prince Harry, as part of his misinformation, can look into the CNN stuff. Do you think he'll get right on that?
I wish he would.
On the CNN misinformation.
Because I know if anyone,
because that's information disorder, isn't it?
If anyone can do it, Harry can do it. Let's get him on the job.
God, so sickening. I'm just so sick about this. It really makes me like, it's beyond anger at this point, where it's like creates a certain sort of resolve that we've got to do something. This kind of madness and mania where a guy goes in and supposedly kills a bunch of people, allegedly. We don't really know what happened. Something weird. All these incidents are very weird when you look back at them, and the FBI had prior contact with this guy or knew about it. It's always strange.
And the immediate calls for banning guns. Maybe that's the motivation.
That's what I mean.
It's a gun control thing. Yeah.
Of course. That's one of the theories, that they stage these in order to drum up hysteria for gun control legislation. It's not surprising. They just rolled out several bills that are going to ban assault weapons.
Yeah.
And so here we go again. It seems like just when you need a mass shooting to be in the public consciousness, then someone does it.
Just when you needed a black man killed by a white cop. Just when you like.
But I think if it was going to be staged though by the FBI, I think they would have chosen a white guy, because then, that would have confirmed the leftist narrative that only
but it's never a white
guy shoot people.
Like these instances that they use, it is never, these mass shootings are often white guys. Let me say that. But like the guy in Florida, wasn't he Hispanic? the kid in Florida who shot up his high school. And then there was this huge campaign with people like David Hogg.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's not true. Like, especially if they define mass shootings as like more than 4 people or something. If you look at the statistics, it's not borne out at all that it's all like white guys. It's not at all. It's
and in the meantime, I think somebody posted, maybe it was you, on our little Facebook circle, that there were like 20 deaths in Chicago over the weekend.
Yeah.
From shootings.
That's just a normal weekend.
Yeah, it's a normal weekend and no one's talking about that because it's black people shooting black people and white people.
And I'm just so tired of it. I really am.
Yeah, I'm tired of the just the lies. If
the
we
dishonesty
just had
and hypocrisy,
if we just had a media that was reporting stuff, it wouldn't feel so scary. I think what's so scary to me is not these incidents as much as the misinformation.
They're immediately politicized.
The propaganda. Yeah.
And used by the state to confirm or push a narrative that they're then going to use to usurp your individual rights.
And Facebook is censoring comments on this, and they're fact checking it, and like, it's creepy. It's so uniform. And one of my, I don't like, if you hated Trump, put that aside for a second. One of my main points, as I've said, Sage Sunny, as you've been saying, as I've said a million times, the fact that the media is a literal, and the social media and the media are so left, having leftists in charge of your government is really dangerous. I mean, Trump couldn't do anything without a probe. I mean, like, everything, even stuff he didn't do, was probed and vilified. That's way more safe. And that was outrageous, and he got annoyed at those lies, but at least it was safe. At least Trump couldn't get away with anything. He couldn't be corrupt. He couldn't be corrupt because
he couldn't be good, but he also couldn't be corrupt. He couldn't do anything.
He couldn't do anything. Now we have the situation, and it was obvious we had this under Barack Obama, and we have the situation where I think it's worse now than it was under him. And we used to have social media. Under Barack Obama, we had social media because they weren't censoring. Now we don't have that. So now we have uniformity of message, and the only way around it is fringe social media, which is not as easy to use. It's harder. I feel way less informed than I used to be because it's so time consuming to seek out the news at this point that I just don't spend that much time on it. And I spend a lot of time reading news compared to the average person. So that's where we're at. And I think that's really dangerous when power is essentially uncriticized. And that is the reason to never vote establishment ever again. Is not that voting matters. Oh, all right.
Depressed, canceled.
Yeah. So an objectivist said something on social media I want to discuss. Another thing that we've said a million times here on this show, talking about, is it a private company or isn't it a private company kind of thing. I really, I want to show you guys too. Facebook suspended me from posting or commenting for 30 days for a meme I posted 3 years ago. And I want to show you the meme. Can you see that?
That was when the congresswomen all dressed in white, correct?
Yes.
At the State
of the Union. I mean, this is a dumb meme. It's not even that good. But obviously they have an AI that is just looking for white hats as if the Ku Klux Klan is our big problem. Right? I mean, oh my God, the Klan. Hello, it's the 21st, the 19th century called. And once they're
jokes are a form of information disorder. Just remember that. Jokes shall not be tolerated.
Yeah. So this ridiculous meme got me
This is like 3 years ago.
For 30 days. I have a 30-day no comment, no post.
They finally got around to you, huh?
Whatever. They've been shadow banning me for years, but they probably just somebody at Facebook with nothing better to do goes, I'm going to make an AI targeting the Klan. Like, taking, someone decided this is really important. I need to write a big program to go around and search every image on Facebook for these white pointy hats.
But you're making fun of the Klan indirectly, so isn't that good by their standard? Like there's no
nuance.
There's no nuance. There's no nuance. Yeah, it's just you said Klan. You said the word.
White hat.
Like
white pointy hat.
Was it Gad Sad or whatever use the N-word in context of like criticizing someone using the N-word or something like that and got banned because he, it's that level of stupidity.
Yeah. Right.
It's unbelievable.
Okay. So here is something else. I'm going to share the screen and show you this tweet from the Subjectivist. Harry Binswanger, prominent objectivist intellectual, wrote, "The more obscene profits Big Pharma earns, the more resources will be devoted to making us healthy." He thinks Big Pharma wants to make us healthy. That's what's funny to me is like, this to me is so disconnected. And I know Harry. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude to Harry, but I wrote this. Or spent bribing various global governments and state science institutes into shoving drugs into millions and even billions of bodies paid for by Western taxpayers. Not capitalism. James Taggart and Floyd Ferris would be proud. I mean, here's what I don't understand about this. If an industry is so overregulated, as pharmaceuticals have been for decades, do you really think the companies operating within that environment are like heroes? I mean, do you think the people that work there are good people? And you might have some
are, sure.
I was just going to say, even Orrin Boyle produced some steel, and even Taggart Transcontinental had Dagny, but it had James. And what are we dealing with here? Like the trains were still running thanks to Dagny, but fundamentally you had a moocher company. And he was working behind the scenes with politicians and other businessmen to steal and crush and, do what he did. James Taggart, I'm talking about. So why do you think, like, there's this objectivist knee-jerk reaction of wanting to defend business, even though we live in a fascist business environment? And in my experience as a management consultant, these health companies, I was in a lot of health companies, a lot of people with ideas, with these heroes who are developing new health technologies or drugs. They start a very small company. They work on that, and then eventually they get bought out by a big pharmaceutical company. So these big pharma companies are often just they're not really the people with an original initiative or I don't know what you want to call it, like ingenuity.
Yeah.
They're often they'll buy these small companies because they have the funds to and the relationships to get it approved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have the resources to get through the red tape.
They're really political entities with a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And they are one of the number one lobbyist efforts in Washington. So, this question of who's in charge, is it the businessman or is it the politician the businessman has bought, who has the power from the regulations? I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's these are the people running things. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think so, that's really naive to me. And I just can't understand how someone could read Atlas Shrugged and 70 years later, 60 years later, deny that aspect of not capitalism, but the mixed economy exists. I don't even think we have a mixed economy. I feel like it's the only mix. And post COVID, there's so few small, they're crushing so much small business that there's even less mixed economy a year later, because it's the small businesses that are the heroes and the free thinkers and what's the word? The men of the mind who are coming up with new ideas and new ways to do things. It's the small and medium-sized businesses before they get bought out or crushed by a bigger entity. And the exception to that was Silicon Valley, I think, for a long time. So, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if you're one of those people who wants to create something and do something amazing and have a company, you're not going into big pharma. You're not going to work for Pfizer.
Well, I kind of think there's 2 points here. I think his probably intention, this idea, like if you're just pushing back on the idea that obscene profits are necessarily bad, which is a trope, leveled at capitalism, that profits means evil. That's what he's really trying to do here, is say,
I realize that.
No. Just let me finish my point though.
Okay.
That's what he thinks he's doing, is pushing back on the all profits are evil trope, and by turning this around in a pithy way. But if you read this with some nuance, like you would and I would, it comes off as really ridiculous, because we don't have a free market situation where people are just railing against big pharma because of their profitability.
Right.
It's also the case that the FDA and the way the global health cabal works, they have created standards, protocols, methods that these companies have to accede to, that results often in treatments, that can be damaging or unhealthy, but can receive state approval if it's, in fashion or whatever. So the whole fascist machinations underlying the system and can end up in some really awful trends and processes and medications and products that aren't healthy. And so this comes off as just being really kind of stupid because it's not nuanced. So on the one hand, I get what he's doing. On the other hand, it really comes off as stupid. And this is rationalism, in my opinion. Like, that's what.
Why does it come off as stupid to you, though? Like, it feels to me, it does feel like rationalism. Something about what's in the news today with this tweet going out, today. I don't know what he's responding to or what made him tweet this,
Right.
but,
because he's in the rationalistic world of not really understanding what's really happening on the ground, in terms of like how these state and national NGOs and like you said, the State Science Institute and global governments, the WHO, the CDC, and the FDA, and all these organizations conspire together and work on behalf of some of these companies to approve or disproportionately approve their medications. And so there's a lot of corruption and bribery, the whole, what we can all imagine is really going on in, and how this stuff gets put to market. On the other hand, there are some amazing, heroic, brilliant, genius people who come up with medications and drugs and treatments that should make a lot of money. And that's awesome and fine. And I don't like the fact that the left has a knee-jerk reaction to, the fact that, it costs you $50 to buy a drug that might have cost billions of dollars and thousands of years of science to make. That pisses me off too, that people aren't more grateful that they have these treatments at their fingertips and that these people are the ones who are doing the research. So I'm sympathetic to like the spirit of what he's saying, but it comes off as dumb because most people are going to read that and they're going to be like, come on, man, really? Like,
right. I mean, maybe he needs to qualify it with I realized that I don't know how you could qualify this. Like, why even make this statement at this point? Or you could say, I just think that obscene profits are bad if it's literally on the backs and it's corrupt, the backs of, Western taxpayers, or it's done in a way that's really dishonest, like these, you know, FDA approved, which gives it this credibility that it shouldn't have. I mean, there have been drugs yanked that the FDA had approved. Like, just take statins. Like, let's not talk about the ones that will get this video banned. Just statins alone, which are these, like, they give them out like candy, with these really bad, massive side effects. And they really aren't being used in a way that makes sense. And I think I told the story on this podcast of how I was put in the hospital with this weird heart thing going on caused by this medication. And the first night that I was in the hospital, they tried to give me a statin, which is a it's a long-term drug.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. It's not an emergency drug. You don't take it to avoid a heart attack
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that lowers your cholesterol over time. It lowers your LDL cholesterol
over time. It's a prophylactic drug.
So, they given it to me that night, and they don't even know what's wrong with me yet. And it's not even something that would kick in right away. Like, it's like they're just handing it out. And it's because the FDA said heart issue, give them a statin. And I just, like, if you have never been, I don't know, does he not know what's going on in the medical world, that those drugs are very dangerous? And because of the FDA, the consumer is not really aware of it, because we're not doing our homework anymore because, the FDA approved it, it's fine. Most people, and this includes me, before I had a chronic illness that required me to figure it out and kind of become my own doctor, I thought I could just go to a hospital and get very rational, objective scientific treatment. And that isn't actually true. It's not true at all. So there are some aspects of this old industry that used to be rational that are still kind of carrying it through. And as you said, there are still some really great people working in that industry because this is what interests them, and they're good people and they're making amazing discoveries. And but the vast majority it's a really corrupt and awful system, our medical system. And I'm sure Harry doesn't know this because he's probably healthy and doesn't know as much as I know, and I don't expect him to. But even if you just read headlines, you can see, and forget that industry, you can see this across industries, that there's very little left, if anything, that isn't really regulated and controlled. And so the bigger the company, the more corrupt they're going to be. They're going to have to be, because if you don't become corrupt, you get taken down. You get taken out.
Well, two quick things. One is the minimum standard idea, which you alluded to, which is when the FDA, steps in, or like you have building codes and stuff like that, it takes away an incentive in the marketplace and for consumers to be intelligent and look to different sources to like validate, like drugs or whatever it is, or because everyone just assumes, well, the government regulated it, so it must be fine. And so anytime a doctor just says, well, it's FDA approved, you can take it, and you see this a lot in mental health drugs and psychiatric drugs, where people like physicians who aren't experts in psychiatry just dish out like antidepressants to people without really understanding what's going on or like what the situation is. Hey, here, teenager, here, just take some, antidepressants or something. But the second thing I wanted to just mention is it's these kinds of tweets, I think, that have really destroyed our side. And this kind of stuff, or this isn't good for our side, which is dedicated to liberating, and having a true free market in medicine. Because what he's trying to say is, profits are great. They, in a free market, those profits get turned around and they use those for capital to do more research, and it's going to make us all healthier in the long run. Well, like, we kind of understand that because we're like dyed in the wool free market type people.
Yeah.
Like the average person who sees something like that is to be like, what? Blah, blah, huh?
Yeah.
How stupid this, and they're just going to disregard it, or, and maybe it generates an argument or something and people go back and forth. But this is not a helpful tweet, because it's failing to really get to the essence of what, we're trying to say, in a
Doesn't it
nuanced way.
equate free market with cronyism? I mean, he's taking a very regulated, very fascist industry
great point.
and treating it like it's free market. So all the consequences of that fascist, he's associating that with freedom.
Yes.
And then people are going to go, well, screw that. I mean, we can't have these companies out there hurting people.
Freedom. If this is freedom and capitalism, big pharma, I don't want any part of that.
I don't want it. And they would be right, because there'd be a self-preservation, common sense instinct that they would be having that is valid. It is valid to be upset about the censoring on Facebook. And in a common sense, this is a danger to me and my society way. So
Bill Gates and Fauci and the WHO, that's big pharma. Like that's what he's defending. Well, if that's what he's defending, I don't want it. He's not saying, hey, there's a free market out there, or there's some like utopian free market situation we want to get to. This is like people that define capitalism as anything that America has done. So America had slaves. Well, capitalism means slavery. No, you can't associate, what someone's doing or the current situation to what your ideal is. You have to distinguish the ideal and explain why the current system is not representative of the ideal. It's the antithesis of the ideal. Because we have an FDA and we've got these global health organizations. We've got big tech censoring anyone who wants to talk about it or have an open conversation about HCQ or any of this stuff. Like, this is not capitalism and freedom,
Yeah.
And so we equate big pharma with it.
Right. So that I just had this like visceral response to this tweet, like, oh, and it's not even about profits. It's like they will take that money and they'll go buy the WHO so that they can sell their drugs to India, paid for by us in part, because we're the humanitarians that give money to the small region in India that needs, help, medical help. And it's all coordinated and created. I mean, if people think that is a conspiracy theory, it's only because the news hasn't covered it. If you do any looking at all, you will see it's facts. It is facts that these companies, they buy governments, they buy these globalist organizations, and they push their products into these places that they can't really defend themselves very well, these poor people or whatever. And we can't either. It's being done to us, and it's hard enough for us to defend ourselves. And we're, first worlders. So they're trying to do it here. And I mean, this is their opportunity, and they're doing it. So we're seeing it right in front of our eyes in this country this last year. So anyway, and it's been done to us too, if you just look. But these are all government pushed things, medical things. I don't want to say the words because I know this podcast will get taken down. We've already lost a couple podcasts by saying words, bad words.
Yeah.
So
disinformation, disordered words.
Disordered information words. That's right. Maybe Harry can provide me with a list. Harry Windsor. So I appreciate Harry Binswanger, but I didn't like this tweet, and I don't respond a whole lot on Twitter to anything. I don't really get on there very often, but I responded to this. I'm like, oh, how can you say that at a time when we're like watching these big companies with huge amounts of corruption take advantage of this emergency to push drugs on us that don't make any sense and to hide and suppress information on drugs that do? That's what's happening in the world. Those are facts. And in the midst of that, you go, hey, don't get upset when these companies that are doing that are making huge profits. It is like completely disconnected.
Yeah, it's Again, it's ignorance, it's rationalism, because it's not taking into account the true facts of the situation. He's making a very abstract theoretical argument that's going to fall flat for most people who are in the
Especially
know.
now, especially right now.
Yeah. If you're educated at all on it, you would at least be like, wait a second.
Yeah. Yaron Brook, chairman of the Institute, the Ayn Rand Institute, said recently, or I don't know. I mean, he was disillusioned and disappointed in the Tea Party, and really just doesn't like the Christian right. Thinks they're anti-intellectual, and they read a lot of Atlas Shrugged during the Tea Party days, and then they just kind of didn't become objectivists, or sort of dropped it, or didn't really appreciate Ayn Rand and everything. And this is why, like, if you're telling people who are getting their news from these fringe sources, so they actually know what's going on, compared to people who are just reading mainstream media. So they're reading the fringe news as well as the New York Times and other things. So you're telling these people to appreciate the obscene profits of a crony fascist business that is right now doing things that might physically harm them and their families, and mandate it with the government beyond our control. You're telling those people, hey, I'm an objectivist, listen to what I have to say. And they go, oh my God, you people are stupid. You people are ridiculous. Mm-hmm. This is why they reject Ayn Rand, because of this kind of thing. It's not because they're Christians. It's because your messaging sucks. I'm not wrong, right?
Well, it's not just messaging, but I know what you mean. It's lack of scholarship, lack of depth and nuance, qualification, and just like a scholarly way to approach something like this, where you could say, here's what we should be getting to, here's what we want to get to, and here's what exists now. But yeah, here's the moral principle on top. Profits aren't bad. Profits are, you could just state that as like a good general principle, that people making money from their effort and from great productivity is great. And that's what we need to encourage, and we should love and celebrate. However, if you're going to then apply
that leads to amazing products, like the incentive of that leads to our amazing lives and the luxuries that we have. And that is true.
And that's precisely why we don't want to regulate the system, and we want to liberate the system, because the true free market incentives of reality, if people are properly protected and their rights are protected, leads to these good things. And, but when you try and ball all that up into one concrete, related to big pharma, when, especially in the light of all this controversy, you're inducing a massive amount of confusion and cognitive dissonance in people who do understand this stuff, or do understand some of the facts related to, or have concerns related to the pharmaceutical industry, and then they're just going to turn off. So part of it's the messaging, putting out a stupid tweet like that. And then part of it is not following up with hey, we're objectivists, and here, let us analyze this deeply. Here's everything that's happened over the last 50 years, and why it's all gone awry, and here's a system we need to get back to.
And Ayn Rand never made these mistakes. I mean, she was always very grounded in the current context of what was happening, and took current pains and current things that people were seeing, and tried to use those moments to explain to people what was going wrong, what was truly going wrong. It's not capitalism. It's not profits that are causing this problem. It's something else. And that's how she would approach that. And then I just, anyway.
We can't have a knee-jerk defense of corporations and big business anymore. It's just if you're a big business, if you're Orrin Boyle and James Taggart running a crony capitalist company, which many of them are today, particularly in big tech and pharma, don't defend these people. They're most of them are horrible. Just watch. You see these like woke commercials and stuff, and they're all pushing this woke corporate policy agenda.
Yeah.
And then, their collusion with like the Chinese communists and like these emerging market dictators. I mean, there's a long history of really bad stuff. Yeah.
The evil behavior by these big corporations is, I mean, in all these categories that you just mentioned, especially just the giving in to what's really evil, racism and stuff like that. Well, diversity, Coke saying in their employee seminar, be less white. I mean, that's big corporation in America today. And they're all that way. It used to be that Silicon Valley wasn't, and now they are too. With all of and if you look at their executives, they're the same people they're from Obama administration goes right into Silicon Valley boardrooms and executive positions and back and forth. It's not, it's one fascist group of people. It might be hundreds of people, but it's the same group.
And there's the same company selling soda with corn syrup in it, which helps produce a massive epidemic of obesity and diabetes.
Yeah.
And then telling us to be less white or something. I mean, the whole thing makes me sick. And especially when you go back through history to even 100 years and you look at the history of some of these corporations, these multinationals, like we've got to be really careful who we're defending.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. If you want to see real capitalism, you have to go to smaller and medium-sized businesses. And even there's a ton of corruption. They buy local officials and stuff. And, the Garcetti's, like there's a guy, the LA mayor or whatever, like somebody worked in his administration, just got convicted of massive real estate fraud where he was taking money to approve real estate projects. And of course, a lot of these are small business guys, and they are paying people like that guy to crush other projects too that compete with theirs. And that happened. I saw that firsthand in Minneapolis multiple times.
Oh my God. Real estate is the worst.
Where not just real estate, but just businesses, like wherever the government could license you and cause, you had to get approval. Other companies would pay the government to crush the competitor business. So that happens at the small scale. Anyway.
Yeah. So you got to be careful what principle you're fighting for and not conflate it with bad guys and just have a knee-jerk defense of all business must be good because they're business.
Yeah. It's like just a denial that the evil stuff exists. I mean, we're not saying there aren't good people or good businesses, but you can't deny that people will use the government to crush their competitors and it's evil. And in this case, to force people to buy their products, as the insurance companies did with Obamacare, and as we're seeing with certain drugs, which shall not be named.
Yeah, if a company comes out and says, hey, we're fighting for a free market and a level playing field so we can just freely compete and like offer the best services, none of them do that. The first thing they do is, okay, we got to go buy guys in Washington to crush our competitors or change the rules that benefit. I mean, and that's to like some extent, that's totally expected. And the more regulations and the more fascism we have, the more of that like regulations beget more regulations.
Yeah. And I know Harry knows that. Harry knows that if you have an industry with decades of very, very almost unlimited regulation, like these companies cannot move without approval from the government. Big Pharma, I mean. They can't do anything, and everything they have and every product they have is subject to immediate cancellation by some bureaucrat. That's the environment that they are in and have been in for decades, like a long, long, long time. So do you really think they're great companies at this point? You think great people want to go work in that environment? They don't. So you end up with corrupt management. Anyway, on that note, that happy note, that's all the news I had. Did you have anything?
No.
No.
I have many.
Want to talk about? Well, no, we don't want to talk too much about your political issue you're dealing with, because then people know where you live.
Yeah. Well, but the principle of it is fight locally. Like in the area where I'm at, um, there's a small group of people that have worked to expose corruption in the November election, and it's becoming a national story, and it's induced and provoked a statewide investigation and potentially a criminal investigation. So it, the takeaway for anyone listening is you can really have an impact locally, like two people,
How
one
many
person.
people would you say have moved the needle in your town? And this isn't it's not a small town. It's a
Two.
Medium-sized town, would you say?
I have a friend whose wife simply went through a bunch of emails that.
How did she get the emails?
The locality released them. There's a freedom
So
of
she had to
information.
file to ask for the
No,
emails?
no.
Okay.
Well, one person did, one other person did, and then the locale actually ended up releasing emails publicly after they received a lot of pressure publicly from the media and other state authorities. They ended up having to release their thousands and thousands of emails. Oh, we're fine here. Look at all of our emails. Well, they did, and they found even more smoking guns, which have now called. So these are just regular people, like either
but
attorneys
we're talking
or regular
about
people.
maybe a dozen people who file for the emails. A couple media
Not
people
even
put some pressure.
Couple people leads to a dozen. I'd say like 2 or 3 people have led to hundreds of people now, and have led to senators and congresspeople and DAs and media. And because the government really doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
But there are always some legislators locally in your state, especially Republicans, that are pretty hungry to make a name for themselves.
That's
and they
interesting.
don't, because they're like small state guys. So if they get something juicy, or they see some people that are really interested in what they're doing, you can really get with that.
That's an interesting point. People who would want to, I mean, their own incentive is to actually pick up a juicy story about corruption or something. So a few people, if you can just get the evidence and get maybe one media person, even a fringe media person, to write it up and kind of make it official and make it shareable, you can make a difference. Totally. And this isn't a small, tiny town like my town. This is a medium-sized town, would you say?
Sure.
What's the population of your town?
I don't know.
It's at least a couple 100,000.
Yeah, no. This is a big area, and
I have 10,000 people in my town.
Like hundreds of thousands, kind of a thing. So,
yeah,
it'll affect, could affect, but and then that becomes sort of like national news, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it sparks other people around the country to take on similar. And now there's a lawsuit filed. At some point, we'll share all this when it becomes.
And this is related to ELECTIONs. This is related to the fall shenanigans. And in Doug's town, half a dozen people, a few people were the ones who made the initial difference that has snowballed now. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. A little bit of effort, us making a little bit of local effort. And then that will become a national story, which will discredit all of these people who said there were no fall shenanigans. Right?
And remember that the federal government is gone. Like you can't call your state, your federal congressman and have them do anything about anything. That whole system is broken. The only thing we can control is your city, your town, and your state.
Unless you live in California,
unless it's California or New York or something. But if you're in a medium-sized state or a reasonable state, or even like a city or a smaller city or whatever, you can do a lot. There's people that are hungry to report.
Well, I live in Orange County, and I would say that even though we live in this huge state with these very corrupt and distant leaders, Like I can't, there's no way. I've seen representatives, state representatives swear, like use the F word on Twitter at their constituencies that don't like what they passed or did or something. Like the rudeness and the just disregard for their constituency. They don't have to care. They do not have to care. They will be reelected over and over and over. It's all very corrupt and done. However, if you live in a community like I do in Orange County, I think you can make a difference because there's a certain amount of like civil disobedience that happens within this very Republican red constituency. And like during COVID, we saw that where like Newport Beach was just like, we're not going to enforce mask laws. And the sheriff came out and said he wouldn't do it. And so if you get involved locally, even in a state like mine, New York or California, or an area where you feel like, gosh, you know, this whole place is really blue and there's nothing I can do, I think you can do something. I think you can still do something. I'm planning to, this year, I hope, get involved to stop equity in the schools here in my little town. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I thought I would start paying attention to it and
well, you know,
speaking out
sometimes
against
though,
it.
even if 1 or 2 people write a letter, that's enough for someone who's already inclined to be concerned or dislike it to say, I'm getting a lot of letters from my constituents who are really concerned about this, even if they got 1 or 2.
One letter, right.
Because then, you know, they can say that and say, look, I'm getting letters, and then they're responding to their constituents, you know. So get 5 of your friends to write a letter to them saying, I'm outraged by this equity thing. And then that person can stand up and say, hey, we're getting pushed back on this. That's, you know, and that's enough sometimes just to slow the shit down.
With Zoom, you can attend these meetings without, like, in your pajamas. You can go to a city council meeting without leaving your house.
These people don't like conflict. They they just want to go and do their little thing and be, you know, if people show up and they're pissed. I went to a rally a few weeks ago, and you get 100 or 200 people that are pissed. No one likes that.
Yeah.
Locally, because it's like these people like are your neighbors and stuff, and they're in the same community as you.
They live somewhere.
You're not in a citadel in Washington, D.C. behind Biden's barricade. I mean, these are people, and they don't like it when people are pissed. You know, it's uncomfortable, and they don't want people to be pissed. And
so I think that's a really positive note to end the show on, is that you are making a difference in your medium-sized town. In a national story.
People I know are really
have really made a difference. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have a national impact by working locally. And it didn't take that many people. It's not like you need 100 or 200 people. You need a few people. So you can be one of those few people that makes a difference, and it snowballs into a lot of support.
Especially if you're an attorney, or you know an attorney who kind of knows how to navigate like freedom of information requests and can file a lawsuit and kind of stuff. That really, really helps to have like someone who's like an attorney in your corner who kind of gets the legal process.
All right, cool. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Another great discussion. You can follow Doug at ratcap.com. Is that right? Or the ratcap?
Theratcap.com, the Ratcap podcast on iTunes. You can subscribe to my podcast. Yep.
Podcast. You're also on Facebook under The Rational Capitalist. I'm on Facebook under Sunny Loam, and it doesn't matter because
you need a whole new social media presence, man. We gotta both get off Facebook. I'm on MeWe and Telegram, so I got to start just.
I'm on all that stuff too, but like I'm just hard. I don't know, man. I can't. It's so much work. I'm too busy. I can't be bothered right now. But hopefully, you know, when my health stuff settles, I'll come back strong. Either that, or I'm going to delete my entire life online and go local. And because I'm kind of afraid of what they can. I think things are going to get bad, and I don't want to be stupid and walk into the line of fire. You know. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. It's filled with satire and fun. It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done.
perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right and achieves world peace, guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?